29th of January's edition of the Q Files. I'm Steve QUAYLE, and I want to open tonight's show with an incredulous and inane story, and I think that you'll agree once I read it to you. And listen to this. One of my listeners in Buffalo, New York area sent me his take on this, and I think it'll be yours too, but this is almost beyond too much. Listen to this. Buffalo police questioned two Iraqi nationals who were seen videotaping the city's water treatment plant Wednesday. The men who live in the States now were spotted by a plant guard. Police then tracked them into a home on 7th Street, and after questioning them, believed the incident was an innocent mistake. The tape also contained video of the men's home and of noted architectural structures in Buffalo. The men voluntarily turned over the tape, and police officials say there was probably a lack of understanding about what's going on in our country right now. Now, ladies and gentlemen, if you can believe this story, then you can explain the entire state of the nation at large. I don't believe I speak to mid-America. I believe I'm speaking to people that are cognizant, that you guys that are able to think things through, that are probably in the upper 10% of the intelligence level of this whole country, and yet this is a typical an example of people that just don't get it. Tonight I want to open up the emails right from the start of this evening's program, and ask your thoughts. I really want you to share your thoughts about the coming weekend, about just everything that's gone on. Now, for most of you that probably didn't watch what happened the metals market day, a phenomenon that was unusual. At the start of the morning trading session, silver went up to about 660, and then all of a sudden it got hammered down almost 40 cents, ladies and gentlemen. Then to recover back, right now it's about 627 in the aftermarket. Gold's about $401. Palladium is really showing a lot of strength, and platinum showing a lot of strength. But what was fascinating to me is that based on yesterday's announcement from Greenspan that they might not leave the rates low forever or in a constant state as they have been leaving them, talking about the prime rate, it was too much to expect this kind of a sell-off. Now, remember, and please write down when I make statements so you can hold me to it, but I said when you start to see swings, I said of $50 in the silver, 50 cents in the silver market, I said anywhere from $20 to $50 in the gold market, and at one point today gold was down 20 bucks. I said that's going to be your signal that something's really up. I talked to one of my friends, and he's one of the world's largest palladium and platinum traders. There's nobody bigger in the world. And he said, Steve, I'm sitting on an order right now for 10,000 ounces of palladium if it'll move down $2 more. 10,000. He said, this is just indicative of the orders that I'm sitting on. I said, well, what are you doing in silver today? He said, let me share this with you. He said, I have never sold so much physical silver in one day. So do you understand what's happening? They hammered the markets, saying someone drove the markets down today big time. Now, the amount of federal intervention in the open markets versus the hidden markets had to have been spectacular. But what I'm saying to you is I thought that we would get some kind of indication of a terrorist attack would take place if the market started jumping up and not selling off, but just jumping straight up like they did when silver moved pretty much from 550 to 650 in a matter of 4 days. But it became apparent at about 6:30, 6:35 this morning, that's Mountain Standard Time, that we were seeing something unusual. We were seeing someone of phenomenal financial strength. The only people that I can guess on this one were our own U.S. Government Emergency Stabilization Fund and the Plunge Protection Team driving it down. Now, had it stayed down, you could have said, oh, see, it's selling off. But when I get statements from the bigger metal dealers in the country that they've never sold so much silver in their entire existence, we're talking about voluminous, ladies and gentlemen, amounts of physical. So every time you buy an ounce of silver, an ounce of gold, an ounce of palladium, or platinum, you're taking it out of the hands of those who can manipulate it. So it's been I don't know what to call it, a roller coaster would be an understatement. The only thing I could explain it as is imagine going to a mile high in the sky and then plunging into the ocean a mile deep, then coming up just for a minute, going back down a mile deep, and then coming up, waiting for the next mile high. So we're all over the place. And this is a very significant day for the metals market. Not only did it recover, it's recovering pretty nicely right now, but the point is that somebody went into the market immediately after driving it down and whipsawed the price so low and then start buying everything they could physically. Well, that's only good business sense. Now, here's the question that I'm posing to myself and I'm sharing with you, too. It is conceivable that given the fact that the major terrorist bombing today in Jerusalem, in which, 14 people are killed and 50 people wounded, there's two different reports. Some reports say 10, some reports say 14. According to a lot of the chatter and the Islamic terrorist sites, Tel Aviv is next, followed by Riyadh, followed by Baghdad. I'm talking over the next couple days, and then the infamous U.S. city to be tagged. So we'll see if this thing holds true to form. But again, I can't get information like who's buying it. I can't tell you that X, Y, and Z bought it because the guys who are selling can't tell me that. But they can tell me this, that there is a massive amount of purchasing going on, and you can watch it happen. You could see the red, meaning everything was down. And then you go into the aftermarket right now, the world spot prices, Asia, Europe, etc., and everything is green. So what I'm anticipating is watching with extreme curiosity tomorrow what's going to be happening in the markets, because if there is a continued record-breaking purchase going on of the physical metals, then that would tell me, and I'm talking record-breaking, I'm talking normal, I'm not talking ordinary, I'm not even talking a blip up, I'm talking extraordinary amounts of physical metals being bought, then that would tell me that somebody's got a heads up on something that's going to happen, and they took it down. Now, in case you don't understand this, when you take silver down today as it went down in a pretty dramatic way, and you're going to buy $1 billion, let's say, of silver, and you can knock it down anywhere from, let's say 5%, well, that $1 billion is going to make you a substantial amount of money. It's going to make you about $50 million. So what we're seeing is total manipulation, and we're seeing some interesting and variable factors now coming into the pie. And I would say this, Alan Greenspan, who Doug McIntosh calls Mr. Magoo, is absolutely got to be pulling out the last vestiges of his eyebrows over this deal, because it's getting more and more perilous daily. Now, again, I want to know your feelings about just this coming weekend as far as it specifically relates to terrorism. Let me read you what one of my listeners said. This is Edith, another lady. She said she had to go to downtown Miami. She's a teacher. She had to go for some kind of hearing because she was pushed out of her job by politicians, etc. But she said this, Steve, even though downtown Miami is a noisy, bustling, dynamic, multicultural city with so much going on, life is a blur, everything felt quiet, dead quiet. The city felt spent. This eerie feeling continued for 3.5 hours that I was there. It was almost as if this was a quiet before something. My lawyer complained to me of feeling off, like we weren't supposed to be there. The feeling was worse when I left at 4:20 p.m. and drove north on I-95, and did not diminish until I was past the Spaghetti Bowl, where I-95 and 826 West intersect. I'm not familiar with that, but those of you who live in that area probably are. When I managed to get home at 5:45, the feeling was pretty much gone, but I mentioned to my husband my feeling. He dismissed it as nerves. Sounds like an understanding male, who I have been in that realm before. Listen to this. She said, please note, Steve, that I've had feelings that I cannot explain in the past about events, and then things happen. This does not happen very often, but enough that I take note of it. She goes on to say that I have also been having at least 2 times, or probably 3 times, distinct dreams about Ezekiel's boneyard. As this is just nebulous, I can't call it prophecy, but I do have the odd feeling that something is coming, and that is major and not good at all. And she said, also, have you noticed the evil emanating from the pictures of bin Laden? Now that we bring up bin Laden, did you guys all see Drudge's red headlines tonight? It's an amazing story. Another tip of the iceberg. According to Drudge, everyone, he's quoting another unnamed military source, and the named military source is saying they're going to have bin Laden this year for sure. Now, I talked to Doug Hagman before going on the air, and Doug was stating that a lot of the clerics and the mullahs are making statements that they believe that, how do I say this, the Mahdi is about to be announced. The Mahdi, again, is the apocalyptic figure out of Islamic prophecy who comes on the scene before the end of the world. Now, again, maybe this is all nonsense, maybe it's all crazy, but I tend to pay attention when I start listening to some not only prayerful and careful people, but also when I start to see situations arise. Let me give you a story, and you tell me what you think of this. I received a call from Washington, and I didn't tell you this yesterday because I ran out of time, but I received a call from Washington from a very famous think tank, and again, they were asking me about how high a mushroom cloud would be off a 10-kiloton weapon. Now, they're in a position to know the question or the answer to that, but they called me, and it's interesting because, again, I talked to Shane. Maybe I told you this, but as I reflected on this overnight, I thought, okay, this is pretty weird because, again, as you know, Washington and New York are scheduled for the cities that are going to take the nukes according to everything that's out there and all the warnings. Now, look, what we do, what the Northeast Intelligence Network, Sean Osborne, and all the different analysts that work for them, me and all the different people that I know, and when I say work for, they work with, all of this stuff is volunteer, you guys, and we do the best job we can with the information we have. But praise God, because, again, He never allows a people that are facing judgment to face it without knowing it's coming. The pleadings of God, the intense intervention of God through different people sounding the trumpet, the watchmen, the events that seem to be building and building and building, the uneasy feeling, the intuitive sense of so many ladies out there that are sensing something's going to go on. So we're in a period now where, again, we've been, how should I say this, we've been brought up to the level of orange alert so many times, and in trying to provide you with just the stuff that's out there, again, my goal simply is this. I'll make it real easy, to keep you out of harm's way. There are those, and I talked to you about an egotistical, pompous, rear-end donkey that has a PhD and thinks that you're too dumb to know what's going on. I talked about him, I think, on Monday or Tuesday. But again, it's imperative that we compare notes. So tonight, I guess you'll call tonight's Q Files a comparison of notes. It would just be amazing to me to get the mindset, if I would, if you would, and if I could, of everybody listening tonight. And if you sense a little bit of frustration, I got to admit to you, I am incredibly frustrated tonight from the standpoint of tracking all this stuff and trying to literally be the guy with his hands on all the buttons and his ears in all directions. And I'm simply, I'll be candid, I'm overwhelmed with the amount of data that's coming in. And so sometimes it's good to pull back and ask for other people's opinions and insights. Now, again, I would like to take it to bring the question up to you tonight is what are you sensing and feeling, and if you want to delineate why you're feeling that, I would really appreciate hearing it. Because we're in an area of that would make Alice in Wonderland seem like she had GPS equipment on her back. I mean, it's not that she's late or whoever was late for an important date, the Mad Hatter or whatever, but the point that we're at right now is that through the looking glass is nothing compared to being in La La Land, Wonderland, and Denial Land all simultaneously. And thank God we're not at Neverland with Michael Jackson. But bringing the situation to a head, again, we have got to get a handle on this stuff. And tomorrow's Friday, so then we go into the weekend. It'll be fascinating to see what comes to pass. Okay, Central Florida, Rick is saying the chemtrails were present again this morning. I counted 8 trails, some vectored around 11 a.m. Cloud cover developed for the remainder of the day, and I couldn't see them. By the way, Rick, when you can't see them, they're still spraying above, too. They just spray and spray and spray. And if some of you want a real curious exercise, especially those of you that don't believe that chemtrails are nefarious in purpose and killing people according to the plan, go out some night when there's a moonlight and where you've got a high pressure area where you've observed spraying. You'll watch these guys spraying all through the night. So it doesn't stop just a blue sky, if you will, white blue sky, no clouds. these guys are spraying night and day without ceasing. And so, again, Rick, what you're saying, hey, 8 is nothing. Some days in Bozeman we have probably 30 definable, separate, and distinct chemtrails. Amazing. But just amazing to me that people don't get it, and not that you don't, but it's profitable for you to hear what other people have to say. Here's what Doug says. Steve, my mother, who is elderly, was told by her investment company to immediately sell all of her gold and silver, saying the prices have maxed out and that she needs to sell in order to maximize her profit. If you listen to a lot of the brokers, they're all saying that gold and silver is not the way to go and that all the prices are going back down. Are these people all on drugs? No. What's going on, Doug, is that, as I shared with you, Union Bank of Switzerland sent my friend, who has a considerable portfolio, it's a 7-figure portfolio, telling him they were monitoring. And by the way, he was up, 35 or 40%, and they told him to sell all of his gold stocks, all of his bullion that was held in their account in a custodial manner. Now, what's going on, ladies and gentlemen, just so everybody can get this out, the word behind the scenes is to literally force people who have not only metal stocks but precious metals and that are hard money. They're trying to force, coerce, threaten, and intimidate them out of the market. Does that give you an idea of the panic that's brewing? And it is, as Doug says, an incredible disservice. You asked Doug, are they on drugs? Yeah, they're on the drug, and the biggest drug in the world is called power and ego. Now, he said, what an incredible disservice they're doing for their customers. Again, disservice is an understatement. Destruction would be the correct statement. I realize that they are told, Doug speaking, to push this to people, but how could you look yourself in the face in the morning? They're trying to get the little guy to sell so the big movers can purchase at a lower price. I'm not the smartest person in the world, and my investment experience is zero, but with the weak dollar, the real estate bubble, the equities bubble, all the terrorist concerns, and no jobs around, and gold and silver is going to tank, I don't think so. I don't know about this weekend, but it's the end of the Islamic year, and they have all promised a big one by the end of the year, and their feast. If they don't whack us, they will lose face in the rest of the world, and besides, King George is in trouble, so you know this will play into his hand. Why else would they pull the border guards off and put out the red carpet? Doug. Well, Doug, again, you're reiterating what, and by the way, you may not have much investment savvy or investment experience, but you understand everything to the point of you've got it, they haven't got it. Can I explain something? Remember, everyone, any stock you buy, it doesn't matter if it's utility, it doesn't matter if it's a biotechnology, if it's high-tech, low-tech, or car wreck stock, everything is based on earnings. And what we have seen is the plundering of America's corporation by the greedy devils that have basically been in charge. How do I say Enron? How do I say MCI? And that's nothing compared to the giant investment banks on Wall Street. So again, the thing that you've got to understand is with the plundering of assets, even to the rating and the corporate rating of pension funds and retirement funds, et cetera, you don't know for a fact that what you think is in your pension fund is in your pension fund. Again, I talk to Pastor Langford about every day, and he gives me the daily update in just his little area, Gaston County, North Carolina. I think he's talking about something like 23 to 30 new foreclosures and what do you call them, bank sales, almost on a daily basis. And again, this is not just unique to North Carolina. This is across the board. Do you remember when George Bush Sr. got defeated by Clinton, they came up with a statement that it's the economy, stupid? Well, I think it's going to be to George Bush's defeat, and I hope that Pat Robertson has to eat crow on this one, because, again, it's immigration, stupid. We're at a point now where with the immigration, let me say this, if you wanted to preserve your earning power, your tax base, if you wanted to, you would see by all means that your puppets were well taken care of. In other words, even in a feudal kingdom, the king still had to provide the vassals enough sustenance so that they could produce more than they consume. But in this world of denial and in this world of stockbroker hell, these guys will tell anything. Let me share a little story. Montana Power was one of the best utilities in the country as far as profitability. and Montana Power was just enjoying some pretty explosive growth. Well, the rocket scientists on their board of directors got together and decided they wanted to get into the fiber optics business, and they wanted to get into the communication and telephone business with a company called Touch America. Their stock, everyone, went from the high 60s to the low 6 cents. High 60s, and we're talking, $1 billion worth of stock. The stockbrokers in this town, Bozeman, were pushing that like it was free cocaine at a rock concert or something. The point is that given the intimidation that most people feel when they go into a stockbroker, remember this, and please, if I can give you one bit of advice, these guys will tell you what they're told to tell you, and that means if they want to push X, Y, or Z stock, that's what they're going to push. So if all the brokers are saying gold and silver have maxed out, how do they explain the yen going to record proportions? How do they explain the fact that even today, with the federal intervention in the markets, that so much money was pulled out of the United States today that the ESF, Emergency Stabilization Fund, and the PPT, Plunge Protection Team, were kicked into high gear? But again, that's something that no one would know except those of you that listen, or not no one, but most people would not know except those of you that listen to talk radio. So again, it's an amazing and a perplexing concern of mine that still, and the band plays on. We've heard the Titanic metaphor so long. I gave you my version of the Titanic metaphor, where you have the Titanic and the Lusitania, two major shipwrecks in history, and they're both going down, sinking, but as long as they're pumping water out of out of their respective holds into the air, into the other hold, they think they're going to stay afloat. In other words, that's exactly what Japan is doing. That story that I told you about last night about Japan saying that the Liberal Democratic Party wants the Conservative Party of Tanigaka to start buying more gold, you can bet that hit the overnight markets like a sledgehammer, and therefore the midnight calls went out from all of the New York banks and all of the international banks to hammer gold and hammer silver, and that's exactly what happened, and it's important to know that. Here's an email from Bill. He says this: well, I cannot get to it now. I will send you later a posting that was put up. Someone is telling Osama that wherever he might be, he will receive a big present before dawn prayers on Saturday. Here's hoping it's just DS. Bill. Well, wherever he may be lends credence to the fact that he is in somebody else's hands or control. Again, I think the best guess I have right now is that there's been a deal cut between the Iranian government and probably the U.S., and the fact is that if they turn him over, or will turn him over at a given point, and he's in custody, that they will be able to keep their nuclear power plant secure. That's what I believe could be going on in the background due to the fact that that's the last place that Zawahiri and bin Laden's son were seen. I think the Pakistan push that we're hearing about with U.S. Special Forces and stuff is out to pretty much smash the Taliban. That if those of you who have been listening to me for the last couple of years, I read you the story that before we went into Afghanistan and launched the official war, we allowed 5,000 Taliban and Al-Qaeda and everybody to leave, to literally be flown out of the Kabul and Kandahar, I think it was Kandahar's airport, and flown into Pakistan on Antonov 124 airplanes. So that was designed to keep Musharraf in government, or keep him in his position, and that was a big mistake, the ultimate biggest mistake. How many American lives could have been saved? But remember, you guys, this is not about saving lives. This whole thing is about destroying lives and people. Here's something from John. He says, Steve, I suggest these Buffalo police officers read At Dawn We Slept or any other good books detailing the Japanese attack on Pearl Harbor. Several Hawaiian citizens of Japanese descent regularly shot photos of the harbor showing which destroyers, carriers, etc. were present. These photos were they were then secreted to Japan and used as a template for the eventual attack on December 7th. I may be mistaken, but I believe one of these photos were actually intercepted well before December 7th by U.S. intelligence and dubbed the bomb plot photo. Needless to say, it was ignored at the time. Now, John, thank you for sharing that. to me, it's insanity that given the heightened state of terror alert, and let me put this into perspective. After Gulf War I, under Senior Bush, we took in a minimum of 5,000 Iraqi military and intelligence officers who supposedly were fleeing the regime of Saddam. Saddam was supposedly the one that engineered the flight of all those people to put them in here. So can you ask the figure that anybody would be out taking pictures of a water treatment plant unless they had, I mean, no offense, but there's nothing cool about them, especially with the fact that they had other notable Buffalo landmarks. And as some of you remember, Doug Hagman on his Northeast Intelligence Network showed Niagara Falls and showed a lot of different photos, and this is how they communicate. And Doug is getting ready to bust, and I mean, this is a huge story, everyone. I'm not at liberty to tell you about it. I can only tell you that it is so big that it will astonish the whole country. It's not about where a bomb's going off or anything like that, but the way the communications hub has been set up is absolutely a genius level undertaking, and I'm talking about Al-Qaeda and some really smart ladies, God bless them, and some really smart men have put it all together, and it's astonishing. Amazing to me, the fact that police officers can be that dumb. I mean, and I don't believe that all the police officers are that dumb. The other story was that they were tourists. So, ladies and gentlemen, I want you to know that there's multiple stories, even in Buffalo, going around about this incident, and one of them that they were tourists. Well, again, no offense, but tourists usually don't take pictures of water treatment plants, especially when that's a presumed target of choice and target of opportunity. So rest easy, everyone, knowing that these guys are out there looking after your best. Let's go to this. Let's see. Okay. The coincidence, this is Lou. He said, the coincidence of the Freeport, Texas incident on January 23rd, 2004, and the mysterious person who fired gunshots in the petrochemical area of LaPorte, Texas. Isn't it funny that the incident happened to the BASF plant in Freeport, where the security guard was shot in the arm, and the gunshots fired in LaPorte, Texas, that was not reported by the Houston, Texas media, the chemical companies in LaPorte, Texas, and Harris County Sheriff's Department. Those shots were fired and reported by a certain chemical company where I work, and wish not for my name to be mentioned, because I'll be fired in the daily activity report. However, no one wants to release the info. This is probably a test on their part. The terrorist said it's probably a diversion to something else. Stay tuned. Well, ladies and gentlemen, what is fascinating to me is, and this isn't Lou, this is a lady that sent me an email, if you remember, months and months ago, where I told you that there were 2 refineries in Louisiana that had caught fire and that they actually watched guys shoot at the refinery tanks and set them on fire. And I forget the name of each one of the refineries, but they were only a couple miles down the interstate from each other. So even though everybody knows at the refinery, they're being told, look out for these guys, and they go to it, it's automatically denied. So if nothing happens this week, I'm back to my statement that means that the black government, the internal shadow masters, are waiting for a more opportune time to see as we get closer and closer to D-Day with the elections. And I got to tell you this, having John Kerry coming out as the bonesman too, look at this. To quote the former head of the Federal Reserve, Paul Volcker, hell, son, we own them all. Well, you've got Bonesman 1 in the White House, and now Bonesman 2 that wants to displace him out of the White House. We're going to take a break. We come back. Give me